It's time for Elder Law Matters Radio. Elder law issues can be overwhelming and complicated for families to deal with. Elder Law Matters will demystify all areas of elder law and estate planning through conversation, interviews, and case studies. Each week, partner Melissa Negrin-Weiner will walk you through the twists and turns of planning for your future or caring for an aged loved one. If you want to protect yourself and your family and preserve your assets, or if you're a caregiver for an aged loved one, then Elder Law Matters Radio is for you. Now it's time for Elder Law Matters Radio with your host, Melissa Negrin-Weiner.
Hi there, this is Melissa Negrin, partner with Cona Elder Law, and you're listening to Elder Law Matters. This is a show where we talk about recent stories in elder law and estate planning, as well as speak to really interesting guests about all different topics surrounding seniors, the elderly, and planning for your future. The first story we're going to talk about today has to do with long-term care. And long-term care can mean so many different things. It could mean assisted living. It could mean nursing home. It could mean receiving care at home from a home health aide. But what it means every single time is that it could be financially devastating. So we always tell people there are three ways that you can pay for long-term care. The first one is self-insuring, which is paying out of your own pocket, not ideal. The second is with long-term care insurance, and the third is planning for Medicaid, protecting your assets, and applying for Medicaid benefits. So the cost of long-term care, what you're looking at for assisted living purposes on Long Island, you're probably looking at about an average of $7,000 a month, and for nursing homes, an average of about $12,000 a month. So self-insuring is almost impossible for most people. Long-term care insurance is a great option, and there are a lot of different products out there. I certainly urge people to speak to a long-term care insurance specialist. Perhaps we will have a guest on our show again about that. We don't sell it as elder law attorneys, but I do know that there are a lot of great products out there if you can qualify for them medically and also afford them. And then, of course, there's planning for long-term care through the Medicaid program and making sure that assets are protected and that they're there for you during your lifetime and that your long-term care can still be paid for so that you can have extras or things that you might need in addition to the care. So it's a really big topic. It's something I could talk about for hours and hours. It's something that everybody needs to look into because people are living longer, not necessarily healthier, and people are going to need care. So it's certainly an extremely important topic, and to think about it well ahead of time and not start thinking about it at the beginning of the crisis. The second story that's kind of all over the news these days deals with caregiving. So these stories kind of overlap each other. But the issue with caregiving is that people are unprepared for the costs of caregiving. So now we have the costs for the person who's receiving the care and the costs associated with actually being a caregiver. Whether it's the boomer generation, sandwich generation, the millennials, everybody is a caregiver. And in a lot of cases, especially like the sandwich generation, we're caring for our aging parents, and we're also caring for still our children, and in some cases helping with our grandchildren. So the costs associated with that are so great. Again, as I said, people are living longer, not necessarily healthier, and also people are working longer. So when you have an older person who maybe needs to help with the grandchildren, they may still be working. So now we don't have that ability to rely on that individual, and that individual may still be working and needing to care for their aging parent and constantly having to take off from work to do so. So then you have an issue with job performance, you have an issue with perhaps salary, maybe you have to go part-time, maybe you have to stop working entirely. So this is just kind of one big messy situation, and it's a crisis. It's a caregiving crisis, and there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to help deal with this. But at the end of the day, it's all about education. People need to know what's out there to help them as caregivers. We always say here that everybody is going to be a caregiver or they are a caregiver, one of those two things. And so this is something that people have to think about, they have to plan for, they have to remember that, they have to prepare financially for the burden of, not being able to go to work every day, possibly having to stay home. And things are expensive. So it's something that we deal with regularly with our clients. We talk to different corporations throughout New York State and advise people how to handle caregiving and what's out there as far as resources go so that they can stay at work and they can make sure their loved one is taken care of. There is so much good information out there, but people need to know how to get to it. So that is what's hot in the news right now. And we are going to go to our managing partner, Jennifer Cona, now to hear what she has to say.
Pay equity and the gender pay gap have been in the news for decades. It's not a new story. Currently, women earn about 82 cents for every dollar paid to a man. The gap is even wider for women of color. Black women make 62 cents on the dollar, and Latina women make 54 cents on the dollar. So why is this relevant on our Elder Law Matters podcast? Because the impact of the gender pay gap reverberates into retirement. Studies show that women collect about 80% of what men do in Social Security benefits. This amounts to $307 less each month for women over the age of 65. This at a time when every penny counts. Women's pension income was found to be about 76% of men's pension income. Studies have further shown that women's overall retirement income, including Social Security, pension, interest, and dividend income, as well as other sources of income, is 30% less than men's overall retirement income. The result? The pay gap during women's working years leaves us economically less secure as we age and as we become more vulnerable. That's a really bad combination, especially since, statistically, women tend to live longer than men. So no matter what your age, we should be advocating for pay equity. And no matter what your gender, if you have a daughter, a sister, a mother, she will be impacted throughout her life, and especially in retirement, by the gender pay gap. It's an issue for all ages, and it matters. And what's the takeaway here? It's really critical that women engage in asset protection planning. We need to create estate plans that protect both income and assets, and the sooner the better. Genser Cona Elder Law can help with that.
Hi, this is Melissa Negrin from Genser Cona Elder Law, and you're listening to Elder Law Matters. Our guest today is Debora Thivierge of the ELIJA School in Levittown. Debora is the Chief Executive Officer of the ELIJA School. She received her BA in Sociology from Hofstra University. She's a board-certified Assistant Behavior Analyst and serves as the Executive Director and Founder of the ELIJA School, the ELIJA Foundation, the ELIJA Farm, and ELIJA's Transition Program and Services. Hi, Deb. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your school?
Sure. I have a son who now is 21 with autism. He was diagnosed at 20 months old, and that's where my journey started. That kind of spearheaded my goal to kind of help families while I was helping myself in further advancement of knowledge for treatment for autism and other related disorders related to behaviors. And the first thing that I started was a foundation in 2002 to kind of help myself and families get educated about autism, and then everything else just kind of trickled down with all the work and effort with the community, and other organizations just transpired through the need on Long Island. So that's the history. You know, I always say that I'm a parent of a child with autism first, but my professional line in this field has really come through advocacy and education through my own personal journey.
So I've been to some of your events, and they're really incredible and so well attended. I mean, how big is the need on Long Island for help for families with children with special needs?
Well, with 1 in 59 children being diagnosed with autism, the need is tremendous, and we don't really have a firm handle on numbers. But for instance, just autism alone, there are, hundreds of kids per district that we're trying to support, and districts are trying to support. And it's what we call a tsunami for diagnosis for children and a tsunami in the adult population. So right now, that's the emergency situation. In general, children with disabilities, what causes the most angst in school districts and private schools and for families is challenging behaviors. So the work that we do not only addresses children with autism, but really helps a community of students, families, and children that are dealing with behavioral issues. That's our area of expertise in particular.
Interesting. And what about the farm? What's the farm?
So we started the farm about 3 years ago. It was another kind of journey project as parents of our school, our founding parents of the school that helped us start it in 2006, their children were in the process of transitioning to the adult services. So they were entering in the 21 and older, which we call the service cliff, where services cease for federally mandated free and appropriate public education, and they transition to adult services through the Office of People with Disabilities. And the services are completely different, and the supports are much more limited, and access to services is often quite challenging. So the families that were transitioning out of ELIJA had come to me about 2 years prior and said, "What are you doing about transition for our kids?" I said, "Well, I have foundation, I opened a school, and I think that's about all I have capacity for. So I'm sorry, but what I could do is bring you experts in transition." And so I did that, and then of course I couldn't sleep for weeks on end, and the opportunity for the farm came through a friend and said, "Hey, I have a friend that parents passed away and the estate is forcing to sell the property, and they wanted to stay as a farm, and it's going to get developed because it's in a community that, everyone's building 1 acre mansions." And so the opportunity came my way, and just through a lot of efforts and support through these families and my concept of what would be appropriate for our transitioning kids. We fought really hard. It was really like the most blood, sweat, and tears I've ever had. And we bought a 10-acre farm. It's a working vegetable organic farm where our adults have this incredible work life and integrate with our community, our farming community, and local master gardeners and young adults who want to do community service and want to learn about sustainability. And so it's a truly integrated setting for them. And it's a beautiful space with a farmhouse where we have baking and cooking classes, farm to table. We do art classes, we do meditation classes, and we run an entire adult program, which is a hybrid model of a portion of private pay, and then we try and maximize the benefits through self-direction, through OPWDD Medicaid waiver. And we have right now about 9 or 10 families enrolled in that. And then we have classes that are open to the community, classes for farming, for baking, cooking. It's open to those who receive Medicaid waiver services for self-direction. And so that has been probably my biggest challenge, but my greatest pride, because really it's something that brings the entire community together.
Wow, that sounds really incredible. And where is it located?
So the farm is called the ELIJA Farm. It's in South Huntington. It borders Dix Hills. It's very easily accessible right off of the northern state. And it's nestled right in the community, so no one would ever know it was there. You pull into like a dirt road, and it opens up to this incredible 10-acre kind of oval-shaped farm where there's just always a lot of activity, and it's a beautiful hustle and bustle, and we just have an incredible volunteer community and people working to fulfill community service hours for school, and parents who are in line to retire and just want to do something with their time, and just really just great. So it's very centrally located.
Wow.
It's a very unusual location, yeah, for sure.
So people who are listening to this podcast, you and I both know exactly why we're talking to each other, but I think a lot of people are probably wondering how elder law ties into families who have children with disabilities or special needs. The parents that you meet and the families that you meet, do you find that people are well educated about the types of things that they need to do when they're planning, when they have a child who has a disability, like when they're doing their estate plan or they're trying to decide, how they're going to leave their assets when they pass away or things like that? Or do you find that that's there's a big disconnect there?
In my personal experience with my exposure to my community, it is absolutely something that people don't think about. It's terrifying to bring up this type of conversation with families. They have spent their entire lives advocating for their children, and they're living one day at a time. I mean, this is really what our families are experiencing, and I experience this myself as well. As you get closer to that transition time, we are fully aware of what we are supposed to do, but there's something mentally, because of just this kind of fighting every minute for your kid, that is just a procrastination of not getting it done. And that time comes and parents are not prepared. I think what they're not prepared for is that this process of applying for support and services can take families 3 to 5 years to access the actual funding to make this a functional support system for their kids. So when parents are just starting this 6 months before they're transitioning out, it is not a good scenario. And so many families have their children sitting at home. They're exhausted. When I personally did this, I had piles and piles of papers, and every rejection and every error, every undotted I and uncrossed T that I got a rejection for Medicaid and Social Security, which were the steps to kind of get here. And then the planning for guardianship and what to do with all the funds when you pass and how that will impact your child. The thought process of a parent who has been side by side with their child their entire life, the thought of a parent not being here is not even fathomable. Like, we don't even think that we're not going to be here, because in our head, we have to be here. Right. It's just a non-negotiable scenario. So talking about that, it's just not a conversation. And we experienced that this year with one of our families. The father passed away suddenly, and none of us were prepared, nor was the family minimally prepared. But we were able to support them and get through it, and luckily, almost everything was in place that needed to be. But just transitioning is super challenging for families to deal with, because it's an emotional piece of their lives that they're not ready to face. And I think that we can all do a better job of helping families. And now with my experience and my training and what I've learned, because I've gone through it myself, I feel like I can do a much better advocacy, partnering with you guys and partnering with the community to make sure that people have a better awareness and how to access those services.
Yeah, it's interesting. For every parent, I feel like you kind of never really think that you're done making decisions for your child. But once they turn 18, you're done, unless you do something to make sure that, you still have that ability to assist. So it's really important for people to have that education. Can you just let our listeners know where they could find out more about your school and your other organizations?
Sure. We have 2 websites. One is ELIJA.org, so that's www.elija, there's no H, .org. And our farm has its own website. It's www.elija farm, SARM.org. And so on those websites, there's all the information for volunteering on the farm and accessing our program. And for the school, the ELIJA.org website has all the information there as well for finding out about our programs.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was really a lot of terrific information. Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Elder Law Matters. And please remember to check out our website at genserlaw.com and check us out on social media. We have a great social media page, Facebook page that is chock full of information. Also, if you have any questions you want to ask me directly, you can email me at melissa@genserlaw.com. Look forward to speaking with you all again soon.
Thank you for listening to Elder Law Matters, the only show that talks about elder law and estate planning. For more information, check us out at genserlaw.com.